Some men spend their whole lives trying to prove they belong at the table. I spent mine quietly building the table. Then I set it on fire. The day the wrong man told my son he wasn't good enough to sit at it. Keep that in mind, because everything I'm about to tell, it makes a lot more sense once you understand that about me. It was a Tuesday morning in early October, and Columbus, Ohio was wearing its finest fall colors: pale sky, sharp light, the kind of crisp air that makes you feel like the whole city just got repainted overnight. I was in my garage on the north side of Clintonville, half buried in the engine of a '68 Camaro I'd been restoring for the better part of 3 years. My phone buzzed on the workbench. Marcus. Why would my son be calling me at 9:40 on a Tuesday morning? He should have been at his desk. I wiped my hands on a rag and answered. Marcus, what's going on, son? Nothing but silence at first. Then breathing. The kind of breathing a grown man does when he's fighting with everything he is not to fall apart in front of his father. Dad, his voice cracked on that single word, and something in my chest pulled tight. I'm at Whetstone Park. Can you just come? I was already peeling off my gloves. Don't move, I said. I'm on my way. I found him on a bench near the overlook, the one facing the river where I used to take him fishing when he was 9 years old, except he wasn't 9 anymore. He was 34. Sitting there with his shoulders caved in like an invisible weight was pressing down on him. Beside him sat little Micah, 5 years old, backpack on his lap, eyes wide and quiet in that particular way kids get when they know something's wrong, but nobody's told them what yet. He had a juice box in one hand, and his grandfather's old baseball cap sitting crooked on his head, the one I'd given him last Christmas. At their feet sat 2 duffel bags. 2 bags. Lord help me. I didn't say a word right away. I sat down on the other side of my grandson, wrapped my arm around him, and looked out at the water for a long moment before I turned to my son. Why aren't you at work? Marcus laughed, but it wasn't a laugh that meant anything good. It was the kind that comes out when everything hurts so bad that laughing is the only thing left to do with it. I got fired. Dad? Fired? I repeated, keeping my voice level. From Hastings Supply? Yeah. The job you've had 6 years? Yeah. I nodded slowly, staying calm, staying steady. And the bags? He rubbed the back of his neck, wouldn't meet my eyes. Gerald came by the house last night. Your father-in-law? My former father-in-law, apparently. Marcus's jaw tightened. Renee filed papers this morning. The river kept moving. The leaves kept falling. Micah kept sipping his juice box like the world wasn't quietly caving in around him. All of this happened since last night? I asked. He told her. Marcus said, voice barely above a whisper. He called her the second he left our house and told her if she stayed married to me, he'd cut her off completely. Said our family wasn't worthy of carrying the Hastings name. Unworthy. I let that word sit in the air a moment. The way you let something dangerous cool down before you pick it up. Dad, Marcus finally looked at me, eyes red. I don't know what I did wrong. I gave that family everything. 6 years. I coached his nephew's little league team. I fixed his back porch with my own 2 hands. His voice cracked again, and he threw us out like we were nothing. Like Micah was nothing? Micah looked up at the sound of his name. Grandpa? He said seriously, holding up the juice box. It's grape. I looked at that boy, his father's eyes. My father's nose, 5 years old and completely unbothered, trusting that the adults around him would handle it. He's right to trust that, son, I said. Grandpa's got it handled. I stood up slow and deliberate, the way I do when my mind's already 3 steps ahead of my body. Grab the bags. We're not doing this on a park bench. We drove east out of the park, merged onto 71 North, and I turned the radio on before Marcus could ask me anything else. Johnny Cash seemed fitting. Dad, he said after a while, you're scaring me a little. Good, I said, checking my mirror. Means you're paying attention. Where are we going? 32 years, I thought. 32 years of early mornings and late nights and handshake deals and reinvested profits, and not one word to anybody. Not the neighbors. Not my brother. Not even Marcus's mother, God rest her. Not the full picture anyway. 32 years of living in a modest house on a modest street, driving a modest car, because I watched my own father get robbed blind. The moment people found out what he had, I wasn't making that mistake. But Gerald Hastings had just made a different one. He looked at my son, my blood, and decided we were beneath him. He pulled strings to end Marcus's career. He tore apart my son's family. He sent my grandson to a park bench with 2 duffel bags on a Tuesday. In my city, we came off the highway onto an industrial stretch on the west side, past warehouses and loading docks, until I turned into a long private drive behind a facility that ran nearly 4 city blocks deep. Marcus sat up straight. The sign above the entrance was clean, steel lettering. Underthe and Professional. Ironclad Manufacturing Group. Dad. Marcus said, his voice gone quiet in a completely different way now. What is this place? I parked, cut the engine, and sat there a moment. Looking at what 32 years of silence had built, this I said, is your inheritance? I opened the car door, and we've got a vendor meeting to reschedule. He had no idea what that meant yet. But Gerald Hastings was about to find out. There's a particular kind of silence that fills a room when people realize they've been underestimating someone their whole life. It isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It just settles like dust after an earthquake. I've lived inside that silence my entire career. Gerald Hastings was about to be introduced to it. Wednesday morning, 7:14 a.m. I was already at Ironclad before the first shift. Clocked in, a habit I built in my 30s and never once broke. You want to know the real health of a business. Don't look at the balance sheet. Look at who shows up first and who leaves last. I've been showing up first for 32 years. My office sat on the second floor, corner room, glass walls looking down over the production floor. Nothing fancy. A desk, 2 chairs, a whiteboard covered in numbers that would have made Gerald Hastings's eyes water. On the corner of my desk sat a framed photo, Marcus at 12, holding up a fish we'd caught together, grinning like he'd just conquered the world. I looked at that photo every single morning. Today, it hit different. My operations manager, Dale Foster, knocked twice and walked in at 7:30 sharp. Dale was a big, straight-talking man from Toledo who'd been with me 19 years. He knew every inch of this building, and he knew, without needing to be told, when something was already in motion. He took one look at my face and sat down. Coffee first, he asked, or should I just brace myself? Pull the Hastings account, I said. His eyebrows lifted a quarter-inch. Hastings Supply. That's the one. He already had his tablet out. They're mid-contract, Walter. 18 months left on the agreement. Components division moves about $2.3 million through us a year. $2.3 million. Gerald Hastings sat at dinner tables bragging about his thriving supply business, never once mentioning that the engine underneath those numbers, the contract that made his quarterly sing, ran straight through my facility. The man called my bloodline unworthy while cashing checks signed by my company. I almost smiled. Almost. I'm not canceling the contract, I said. Dale paused. Okay. I'm restructuring it. I leaned back in my chair. Pull every clause tied to vendor performance reviews, I said. Draft a formal evaluation letter. Standard language, nothing aggressive. Notify Hastings Supply that Ironclad is conducting a comprehensive vendor review effective immediately. All payments paused pending the outcome. Standard procedure. It's written right into the contract. Page 11, Section 4, Paragraph C. I knew, because I'd written it myself. They've got 30 days to respond. Before we determine whether the contract continues, Dale nodded slowly, the way a man nods when he understands that something sounding routine is anything but. And who's heading the evaluation? He asked. I picked up the framed photo of Marcus, turned it slightly so it faced me, and set it back down. The new director of vendor relations, I said. Dale blinked. We don't have a director of vendor relations. We do as of this morning, he answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep. He'd spent the night in his old childhood bedroom for the first time in over a decade, him and Micah both. The boy curled up like a puppy in the middle of the twin bed while Marcus folded himself around the edge of it. Dad It's early, he said. It's almost 8:30. I didn't sleep until 4. Fair enough. How's Mika? A pause. I heard him shift, probably checking on the boy, still out. Sleeping like nothing happened. His voice softened. Kids, man, that's because he knows he's safe, I said. You both are. You understand me? Dad, Marcus, I said, the way I used to when he was 16 and getting in his own way. I need you to listen to me very carefully. Not as my son? As a grown man about to step into something real. Silence on the line. I need you at Ironclad by 10. Business casual. We're going to walk the floor together. I'm going to introduce you to the team. And then we're going to sit down and I'm going to explain exactly what I've built and what your role in it looks like going forward. More silence. Dad, what is this place? Oh, son, it's ours. Has been for 32 years. I hung up before he could ask anything else. He needed to see it to believe it. Some things you can't explain over a phone line. He walked through the front entrance at 9:58. I was standing on the production floor when he came in. Watching him through the glass before he ever saw me, watched him stop, just inside the lobby and tilt his head back at the ceiling. 40 feet high, cranes and conveyor lines and precision equipment running in organized rows. 200 employees moving with the kind of synchronized purpose that only comes from years of built culture. His mouth hung open slightly. Good. That was the right reaction. Dale met him at the door and walked him over. When Marcus reached me, he had the look of a man trying to solve a math problem in his head that kept coming out too big. Dad, he said, looking around, then back at me. This whole time? This whole time? You drove a 2011 Accord? Still do. Mom knew? She knew enough, I said. She knew the parts that mattered. She also understood why we kept it quiet. Money changes people, Marcus. The wrong ones find out what you have, and suddenly everyone's got a handout and a reason and a story. I started walking, and he fell into step beside me. I wanted you to stand on your own first, I said. Build your own footing. Know that whatever you became it on your own merit. He didn't say much as we crossed the floor. Workers nodded at me. A few introduced themselves to Marcus. A woman named Diane from the components line shook his hand and told him. He looked just like his father. We ended up back in my office. I closed the door, poured 2 cups of coffee, and spread 3 folders across the desk: financials, org structure, and the Hastings vendor file. Marcus picked up the last one. I watched his face as he read it. Watched the exact second he registered the name. Watched his jaw go tight. Hastings Supply, he said quietly. That's Gerald's company. That's Gerald's company, I said. He's been a vendor here 9 years? Marcus set the folder down, looked at me. You're telling me while Gerald Hastings sat at his dinner table calling us unworthy, he was making money through your company? The room went very quiet. Then Marcus asked, with a calm that honestly caught me off guard. What's in the folder? A vendor performance evaluation notice, I said. Payments paused pending review. I slid it across to him. Standard procedure, I said. And you're going to be the one conducting it. I slid a second document across the desk, a formal offer letter. Director of Vendor Relations, Ironclad Manufacturing Group, a compensation package that would have made his old salary look like a rounding error. His hands went still on the desk. Dad, I've never done anything like this before. You fixed Gerald Hastings's back porch with your own hands, I said. You coached his nephew's little league team. You showed up to every dinner and every holiday and every family obligation with your whole chest. I leaned forward. You know how to show up, Marcus. That's 70% of leadership right there. The rest I'll teach you. He stared at the letter a long moment. When Gerald gets that evaluation notice, he said slowly, he's going to know something's wrong. He's going to make calls. He's going to ask around. And eventually, I said, he's going to figure out whose building he's been standing in for 9 years. Marcus looked at me. And then what? That's the best part, I said. Then he's going to have to call you. The silence that followed was the most satisfied silence I'd felt in 32 years of building. Something in the quiet. Marcus picked up a pen from my desk and signed it. The evaluation. Notice went out at 4:47 that Wednesday afternoon. By Thursday morning, I had 3 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. I recognized it fine. I let every one of them go to voicemail. He wasn't ready to talk to me yet. He needed to talk to Marcus first. And Marcus, for the first time in 2 days, slept just fine. Marcus was standing when Gerald walked in. Not sitting behind the desk trying to look powerful, standing, relaxed, jacket on, hands easy at his sides. Afternoon light cut through the office windows. The production floor humming steady. Below, like a heartbeat that had never once skipped. Gerald stopped in the doorway. "Marcus?" he said, careful, measured, the voice of a man recalibrating in real time. "Gerald," Marcus said, gesturing to the chair across the desk. "Thanks for coming in. Have a seat." In a room Gerald Hastings had funded for 9 years without ever knowing whose name was on the deed. "I think there's been some misunderstanding," Gerald started, smooth and practiced. "We've been a loyal vendor here almost a decade. If we just talk through the numbers, there's no misunderstanding," Marcus said, not loud, not sharp, just final. "Ironclad runs regular vendor evaluations. It's standard procedure. It's written into your contract." Page 11, Section 4, Paragraph C. Silence settled over the room like fresh concrete. "Look," Gerald said, his voice dropping a register, softer now. "I understand things between our families are complicated. There are emotions involved, and I'm not dismissing that. But business is business, and I don't think we need to let personal matters cloud." "You're right," Marcus said. "Business is business." I heard the quiet slide of a folder across the desk. "I've had our team prepare a revised vendor agreement," Marcus continued. "New terms, fair pricing, realistic delivery benchmarks. Nothing punitive. Nothing personal." Gerald was reading now. I could picture him, charcoal suit, silver hair. 9 years of comfortable assumptions dissolving line by line. Worked over by a document prepared by the son-in-law he'd thrown out 4 days earlier. 4 days. Gerald Hastings turned our world upside down on a Monday night. And by Friday afternoon, his entire business lifeline was sitting in Marcus Sinclair's hands, in a building I owned. "These terms are reasonable," Gerald said almost to himself. "I know they are," Marcus said. "I wrote them to be." More silence. Then Gerald's voice changed again. Something underneath it now that hadn't been there when he walked in. "What I said about your family." He started, stopped on the word, couldn't get it out a second time. "I was wrong. It's okay," Marcus said. "I forgive you. I need you to understand something." Marcus went on, quieter now, the kind of quiet that commands a room better than volume ever could. "My father built something extraordinary. 32 years, without asking anyone's permission. He built it for our family. For Micah. Another beat. You looked at us and saw a bloodline that wasn't worthy. You cost me my job. You pressured Renee into walking away from her marriage. And you ended up sitting across from me in our building, reviewing a contract that decides whether your company survives next quarter. Nobody moved. My father taught me that real power doesn't humiliate," Marcus said. "It just makes things very, very clear." The quiet scratch of a pen moving across paper. Gerald Hastings signed the contract. Marcus signed it after him. Calm, deliberate. Nobody said another word about bloodlines. Nobody needed to. Everyone in that room knew who won, and nobody had to say it out loud. I walked downstairs, but I never went into that meeting. I walked straight out to the parking lot and stood next to my old Accord, looking up at the gray Columbus sky for a long, quiet moment. 32 years. Not one day of it had been about revenge. Not really. It was about legacy. About building something so solid, so deep-rooted, that when the storm finally came from my family, it would have somewhere real to stand. I thought about my own father pressing everything he had into my hands with nothing but hope in his eyes. I thought about Marcus at 9 years old, fishing at the river, grinning like he'd conquered the world. I thought about Micah in that crooked baseball cap, serious as a judge, telling me his juice box was grape, like it was the most important information I'd ever need. Unworthy. Gerald Hastings had called our bloodline unworthy. This was our bloodline, a grandfather who built in silence. a father who showed up without flinching, a grandson who didn't know yet what was being preserved for him, but would spend the rest of his life standing inside the proof of it. There's no amount of money, no corporate contract, no charcoal suit that measures that dot I got in my car, turned on Johnny Cash, and drove home through my city in my modest car, from the company I'd spent 32 years building in silence, quietly, completely, undefeated. Thanks so much for watching. If this story hit home for you, do me a favor and hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a little bit of this kind of justice today. And if you want more stories just like this one, stick around here on the Revenge Hub. See you in the next one.